Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our 18th Fusion Friday. My name is Alex Alvarez.
My name is Mongkolpoonsuk.
And we're application engineers here at KETIV Technology. So happy Friday, everyone. Thank you for taking some time out of your busy Friday today and joining us on our webinar. For those of you that aren't aware of what Fusion Fridays are, it's a series of webinars, right, where we go over all the workspaces that Fusion 360 has to offer, right, as well as some of the updates that Autodesk has for Fusion 360. So again, for today, we are going to be talking about rendering. That's a topic that not a lot of people are too familiar with, right? Maybe. And so today, hopefully, Brian sheds some more light on that workspace or that environment inside of Fusion 360. With that, I'll go ahead and pass it over to Brian and get us started.
All right, thanks, Alex. So what exactly is rendering? Formally, it's the process of generating high-quality images from your 3D models. And this is a very important, actually, tool for you, because after you're done taking like many hours and days making your model, you're going to want to present it in the best way possible. And you wouldn't be doing your model justice if you just took a screen capture of it and sent it to someone, right? Mm-hmm. Which a lot of people have been doing in the past, especially with the other types of software, the older software you have. Mm-hmm. But with Fusion, you have a rendering tool in itself, which goes along with the Fusion is a software multi-tool, right? Mm-hmm. And what rendering allows you to do, it creates the high quality images that will really wow anyone who sees the model, mm-hmm. because you're not just creating a rendering just for yourself. Your models are eventually going to be shared with either your customers or your coworkers or whoever it may be after you create your model. So mm-hmm. that's what rendering is for, and I think it's very valuable and useful for everyone to be able to know how to do at least mm-hmm. a little bit of rendering. Yeah,
it kind of puts a bow at the end of your process there, right? Just making it look good, really, getting the point across of how exactly your model is going to look like in real world.
Yeah, you can make a very simple model and make it look very nice with mm-hmm. just rendering it, and people will think it's amazing. So why rendering? Some of the reasons I just brought up a few seconds ago, but one of the reasons is it could be the deal breaker between you and a customer. So if a customer gets an image from 5 different people and 5 different models from other people, and they're just like screen captures of their model, but if yours is a rendered high quality image, you'll really stand out from the crowd. You can also add a sleek new design to, like, if you have a website, you can post your models on there really rendered, and it'll make it look really nice. That'll make you look professional, and it'll also increase the credibility of your portfolio. And lastly, rendering allows you to gain a clear perspective of what your model is going to look like with the material that you chose to make it as. So for example, if you wanted to make a plastic material, and instead of actually manufacturing it and finding out later, oh, I don't really like this material, let's change it up, you can actually render it first without having to manufacture it within this tool. And then you could decide then and there whether you want to use that material or not. So the purpose of today's webinar is to make sure that you, the viewer, are able to create your own high quality renderings within Fusion 360. So we're here in the modeling workspace of Fusion 360. You can see I modeled this chair here in Fusion by the design history down below. And before we enter the rendering workspace, I want to draw attention to the difference between creating or selecting a physical material in Fusion as opposed to an appearance. So to change your physical material, you can go to a body that you have in the workspace, right-click on it, and then you have the option to choose the physical material or change the appearance. And what the physical material is actually what the material is made out of. So this is applicable when you're doing simulation on it. If you're making it steel, then it'll behave in a way of that steel would behave. Also, when you check out its properties, like its weight, for example, it will have the weight of steel. an appearance is only solely for looks. So it'll have nothing to do with simulation, but it'll have everything to do in rendering. And appearances in the model workspace are just like the appearances in the rendering workspace. So once you go to you can change the appearance here in the model workspace, or you can do so in the rendering workspace. So now we just entered the rendering workspace. Notice that some of the tools at the top have changed because now we're using a completely different set of tools. And notice how there's some shadows that's being applied more dramatically, and the texture of the chair has been is more detailed. So just like every other workspace in Fusion that we like to mention, it has a left to right workflow like reading a book. So if we go up here to the top, the first tool is appearances. And if we want to change our appearances, we can do so within this tool. And the neat thing about this tool is that we have a huge library selection down below here. It could range from glass, leather, metal, anything you could think of, and all these types of metal. And the neat thing about Fusion being connected to the cloud here, if I can get this one to open, I'll go ahead and open up this one instead, is that if you leave this downloadable materials box checked, you're able to see not only the materials that Fusion comes with when you download it, but also material that the Fusion 360 engineers have been constantly adding to the Fusion 360 materials here in the cloud. And by clicking on this download materials drop-down arrow here, it will quickly download that material in about a second or so. And now you're able to drag and drop this onto your model. And that's how you add appearances here in Fusion, is by dragging and dropping the appearances on the right-hand side to the model itself. And you could toggle between whether you want to drag and drop it onto bodies or components, or if you just want to drag and drop it onto particular faces. Like, for example, I have some of the some material that I've already used, and it shows here in this design, where I can drag and drop it onto just particular faces that I wanted to. Or I can toggle back to body sync components. You also have the ability to choose to save it as my appearances, your material. You can drag and drop it into here, or as your favorites. And the neat thing about this is that you're able to, once you have some materials located here, you can sign into anywhere that someone has Fusion, and these materials are linked to your login and password. So pretty much, if I wanted to sign in at Alex's computer, for example, for using my username and login, I'll have access to my saved materials here. Also, let's mix it up a little bit. Let's add a little bit more flair, if you may, to this chair. If I wanted to drag some gold onto this, I can. Onto particular faces. If you guys have this one as, if you have this body as one whole body and one whole face, if you go to the modeling environment and use a split face or split body maneuver, you can split it up, so then you can drag these onto particular faces. We can also go down here to wood, or different woods, to add on to our model. Actually, let me change this whole thing to wood. And then I will add the gold to the legs here. And it's just by simply dragging and dropping it onto the part, onto the faces.
Now, again, you're just changing the appearance, right, Brian? You're not actually selecting that material.
Right. This is just the appearance and just solely for the looks. It's not the physical material. But I don't have to worry about the physical material in this case since I'm not running any simulation or I'm not checking for its property or weights. Correct. So now that I have something that I want to work with, like this very fancy looking chair, now we can go to, looks like we're about done here in the appearance window. However, if you want to go into we can actually change the material itself. If we right click on it, we have the option to not only change it, but we can duplicate, which I recommend. If you want to change the material, I would duplicate it first and then change it, because if you change it to something you don't want, then it's hard to go back. But if you duplicate it, you can always go back to the original one. You can also select objects this material is being applied to. You can unassign and delete the object that it's being applied to, and you can also copy this to your appearances or your favorites. It's already one of my favorites, and that's why that's grayed out. So if we go to edit this, we can choose one of the different RGB colors that we have available here. We can enter in the numerical value for that as well. We can even adjust the roughness of the gold here. So if I drag this to the right, you can notice how the gold is getting more and more rough. And then if I drag it back to the left, it's going to be more polished and shiny. And if we go into advanced settings here, we can see we can rename the material if we wanted to. We can select a specific RGB color, maybe one of the defaulted Pantone colors. I like to admire all the different creative names that people have created for these colors. And then once again, you could adjust the roughness there as well. Also, there is a relief pattern that you can select. So what a relief pattern is, it pretty much adds bump to your model according to the image that you have located here. Right now, we don't have any image in here, so it's going to give us a smooth texture. However, if I do add a relief pattern, and let's say I add this KETIV logo, if you zoom in here on the leg, it gave us patterns of the KETIV logo. An example of the patterns would be this fabric here, and this would give us kind of that weave kind of fabric pattern that went around the whole model. And going back to the gold, there's also a cutout option. So what a cutout is if you imagine like an earbud, for example, an earbud piece, and there's like a lot of little holes where the sound comes out of, that's where you're able to create a cutout. So you don't have to model each one of those holes one at a time. Rather, you can create an image of those dots, for example, of those patterns, and just specifically place it on that face. And we also have these other advanced highlight controls to control like anisotropy, which is like the texture and orientation of the texture of the material. All right, so now let's go ahead and go to the next tool next to appearance here, which will be scene settings. And scene settings helps you to edit the scene. The first tool would be the brightness. So you're able to toggle between a very dim kind of room to a more bright light source that's occurring. If I made it really dark, it's pretty much no lights in that room at all. But you can also enter in a numerical value as well. Next would be position. You're able to rotate the environment, not the chair itself, to position the lighting. So notice how I go left here, it kind of goes in a clock, and left to right goes in like a clockwise way for the light source here in the background. We also have a ground scale, which is more visible when we have an environment in the background, which I'll show you in a second. And speaking of the background, you can also change the background from either a solid color, like one of these RGB colors again, or you can choose environment. And this environment would be whatever HDR or whatever environment you have here on this top right-hand side tab called Environment Library. Right now it's in Modern Building. And if I rotate this around, you can see it's kind of in that modern setting with a river going down the side there. And you can bring in your own HDR files. There are thousands to choose from online, whether it's free or whether it costs money. But it really, really adds realistic impact to your rendering altogether. Next, we have a ground plane option where you can toggle this on and off. Right now, I toggled it off, so that it could be hovering over. Oops, wrong one. It could be hovering over the air, like as if it were a drone, or we can bring it back down to the scale of 1 to put it back on the ground there. We can flatten the ground if we want, or we can unflatten it. And we can even add reflections. So as if it were on some very smooth, glossy surface, we can toggle that by adjusting the roughness here. So the more rough it is, the more rough the surface is, and then the less rough, the more glossy finish, like a mirror, if you may. Next, we have different camera settings. So first we have orthographic. Now what orthographic is no matter how I pan from this model, it will remain the same image throughout, even from this angle here. If I pan, it's like we're looking at it in a fixed position. However, if I change this to perspective and I start panning, notice how, let's say I start up here, like I'm standing and looking at this chair, and then I start panning down, you can start seeing that we're going to see more of the bottom of the chair as if we were starting to lay down on the ground and viewing up rather than the orthographic view that we saw earlier. And if we want a combination of the two, or the best of both worlds here, we can do perspective with ortho faces. So whenever we pan, we still get that perspective view. However, if we do a view of the view cube normal to it, we can see that once we pan, it gives us that orthographic perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I understand that there might be some sort of a lag to you guys on the broadcast here, so that's why it might be looking a little jumpy. But I mean, on our side, it is pretty smooth. So that way, you might be seeing some sort of a lag there.
Okay, yeah, I'll try to keep that in mind and go a little bit slower. Hopefully, it doesn't continue throughout. Okay, so yeah, that was the perspective with ortho faces, where you can have the best of both worlds. Next, we have focal length, and focal length allows us to really either do a wide angle capture of the image, or we can really zoom into particular parts of the model. So for example, if I narrowed my focal length, we can really focus on the arm of this chair, for example. And if I pulled this back to a higher number, it brings us back to a more realistic looking image of the chair. We also have different exposures we can set. So exposure allows a particular amount of light to come in. So the more we move it to the right, the more light will come in. Sorry to blind you guys. And the more you move it to the left, the more dim it will be, like as if it was like a sunset or a sunrise is occurring. We also have depth of field. By leaving this checked on, we're able to select a particular point on the model. And once I started rendering here, this might be a little bit laggy for you guys, but I'll try to describe it. So pretty much everything around that green dot that I just located will be as clear as possible. And then as you slowly start to go away from that green dot, it'll be blurry. So it'll help the viewer to really focus on that particular part of the model. There's also different aspect ratios in which you can view it. You can do a square view or a presentation view and things like that as well. And lastly, after you do all of your setting adjustments, you can save this as a default if you'd like. Or you can restore it to your regular default if you messed around and you wanted to go back to the original viewpoint. Next, we'll go to the environment library, and this is where I grabbed that modern building HDR from online as a free resource there. And we also have a bunch of different HDRs in this Fusion 360 library we can pull from. And even at the bottom, once again, just like the materials, we have the capability to download it. And these are really pretty cool. So for example, if I have a cool light, I like the lighting that this gives the viewer or the model. We can have a photo booth kind of lighting. There's even a warm light, which kind of gives you that fireplace kind of look. If you can see there in the background, there's that red orange kind of light that shines onto the chair. And if you look at the chair, it's like outside in the sunset, or it's like I said, like next to a fireplace or something like that. What I really like to use a lot is the Plaza, because it looks like, I just like the time of, or like Europe, I guess. Gives you that Europe kind of feel to it. And I feel like this chair belongs there. All right. And yeah, like I said, you could bring in thousands, or you could bring in a bunch of different HDRs if you want to. There's a bunch of HDRs you can find online.
Mm-hmm. We have a question here also asking, can you convert pictures to HDR of your actual job site?
Can you convert pictures of your HDR?
Yeah, so in essence, just having like the background of your job site, convert that to an HDR, and then bring it into Fusion. As long as it's an HDR file format, you should be able to bring it into Fusion and then have that as your background.
Right. Yeah. As long as you know how to take those kind of photos, it's kind of like a 360-degree panoramic picture. And then, yeah, as long as you see here, the HDR file format or .exr as well, you can bring that into Fusion. And here are some of the ones I found online. So yeah, that first environment that you guys saw was actually one of the HDRs that I brought in. This Plaza environment is one you can pull from your Fusion 360 library. It came with Fusion 360. So you can go ahead and test that out as well. All right, so we just finished scene settings. Now let's go ahead and check out the decal. So what I like to describe decal as is like a sticker, like a warning label or something. So for example, if we want to go to our images and select like a warning label, for instance, to bring in, we can select a particular face to bring it onto. And notice how when I bring it in here, it starts to chain or go onto other faces that I don't want it to go onto as well. We can prevent that by hitting chain faces or turning chain faces off. Some particular cases, you do want it to travel over to different faces, but in this case, we're not going to. And then I can use these manipulating tools to really bring it into the right scale and the right position. And I'll go ahead and put that at the back left of this chair here to indicate that this chair might not be the safest to sit on, or to make sure if someone does hurt themselves on this chair, that was a disclaimer in the back that it was a warning not to sit on this chair. So yeah, that's pretty much what a decal is. You could bring in your own company logo as well. So yeah, next let's go to texture map control. So this allows you to edit the texture that you have on your model, and it allows you to control the way in which the texture was projected, like this wood material is being projected onto this chair. So for example, you can choose different projection types. I do prefer the automatic that it came with, but there's also other types as well. If you choose planar, you can select a particular axis for the material to be parallel with. So I can select this axis if I wanted to. I can select this one if I wanted to, and it'll try to be as parallel as it can to that model, or to, yeah, being projected to that model. You can do a box appearance. So if you had a model the shape of a box, you should try the box projection type, because it might give you a better look than maybe the automatic will. You can try a spherical one. This one's a little bit more obvious on the model here. So obviously it all tries to go to the center here, and because it's trying to project like onto a sphere, but in this case it's obviously not a sphere shape. As well as the same goes for cylindrical. If you have a cylindrical shape, this will try to adhere to that kind of shape as well. And then we also have the ability to do UV diagnostics texture, which you can go into more detail of editing your text appearance. So after you're done with the big four, I guess, the decal is not really a necessity, but it's useful to know, especially. We can rotate this into a position we want, and then we can do an in-canvas render. But before we do the in-canvas render, I'm gonna actually skip over to regular render, which allows us to choose or toggle between cloud rendering and local rendering. Now, cloud rendering requires credits based on how complicated the rendering will be. I chose the biggest size possible for this model, which is 8 credits, and this will probably take a few minutes there. Or I can choose a local renderer. And wait, before I talk about local rendering, the 8 credits here are called cloud credits, and you may or may not have cloud credits. You can check by going in to try to do a renderer yourself. But you don't need cloud credits to run a render. You could do actually a local renderer, and it'll allow you to use the resources here locally on your computer, while the cloud renderer outsources the resource to the cloud, and it'll be processing the rendering in the cloud rather than locally on your computer. So the power of the cloud is that you're able to continue working if you're doing a very complex rendering. So I'm going to go ahead and do a cloud rendering and let that run in the background while we do other things. So I wanted to show you guys the in-canvas render. So what the in-canvas render is if I click on this play button here for in-canvas render, it's gonna give us a fuzzy screen first because it's just started our rendering. And you can see there at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, it's showing its progress of rendering here. So once that blue bar at the bottom reaches excellent, it'll probably be a pretty good rendering. And once it reaches final, then it's probably something we can save as an image and then be on with our way there. And then you can toggle this arrow down below here to stop at excellent if you wanted to, but I left it as infinite. So then as I wait for it to render, if it goes past final, in between final and infinite, there's not too much of a difference, but it does give it a little bit more of that better looking finish there. Next, notice that we have this gear located here that we're able to toggle between choosing a fast rendering, or we can do an advanced rendering, which is what it's set to right now. And if we do an advanced rendering, it gives you that higher quality image. We can also lock the view. So let's say I do move this image to the left a little bit, then it's going to start the rendering all over again because it's trying to do it based off the exact view we're looking at the screen. Yeah, but if I lock that view and I try to move the screen, it's going to tell me that, or it's just not going to there we go. It's going to tell me that the view is locked, and this is how you go to change that. So it prevents me from starting all over again for the local rendering. And then once you're done with your rendering and once you waited for it to go to final, you can do a capture image, and then you can save that as like a PNG, for example. And then notice how down below here in the rendering gallery, that's where the cloud rendering is being processed. You can drag and drop other views into this area to begin its rendering as well. And in the meantime, notice how every time I change the perspective there, it refreshes. So go ahead and stop that. In the meantime, also, I want to show you guys some of the past renderings of this chair. Here's one with the fabric, the white fabric that we saw earlier. Here's one with the similar gold and wooden look. Another one with the white fabric, but with a different background. And here's one with like a park kind of background. And I want to show you guys one more thing. Oops. So what you can also do in the rendering workspace is add light to the model, or like a lamp, for example.
Like a light source.
Yeah, like a light source. So first I'm going to change the background to just a solid color so you can really see this light. And maybe also decrease the brightness. And then I'm going to turn on this lamp that I've hidden here. And notice how there's a light bulb inside that we can actually apply a light bulb material to it, or an emissive material to it that I have right here. I believe it's already being applied, but I'll just go ahead and drag and drop it again. So now it has it. I can make this a stronger light bulb if I wanted to by going to the luminance here.
We have a question here too while you're on that window, Brian. It was asking, is there a reflectance intensity control? Your example is showing higher intensity reflections than the object. So some materials do have the reflectance control. So if you go back, under edit, and then expand the extra options there. Go back to the first one that you had.
The reflectance control here?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so some of the materials do have the option to control the intensity, right, of the reflectance there.
Oh, right, yeah. Yeah, you can show the reflectance. You can toggle the reflectance on the ground, yeah, and as well as the material. So what I did here was I applied the frosted type of material onto it. Then what I did was I edited it to increase the luminance of it as well. And now if I do a quick in-canvas render, we can see what that effect will have to the model. And if you guys want to have like kind of like a nighttime in the house kind of feel to display your model, you can do so with this kind of emissive material here. You can start to see, hopefully it's not too laggy on your guys' end, but you can start to see some of the shadows being produced from this chair and from the light being from this particular angle here. I also have another picture that I've done with a completed rendering of this kind of example as well. So yeah. And this rendering seems to be done here. So once I open up this rendering, you have the ability to download it as one of these file formats. You can also do a turntable, which allows you to take multiple different images or renderings of this particular model from different angles according to the degree, or you can delete it as well. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to email us or call us at this number. We'll gladly talk about Fusion 360 with you guys.
Yeah, so we do have a few questions here. One of the questions is asking, can you add extra lights?
Yeah, like we can add more light bulbs in that scene that you saw there. And it can come from different perspectives. The background, the environment gives you light as well. So that can be that could be like the primary light.
Another light source, right?
Yep.
Okay. We have another question here from Gene. Can you modify the decal after you placed it?
Yeah. So you can right click on it on the decal, and it gives you the option to edit decal.
Looks like we have one more here. Could the decal be wrapped up onto the top of the seat rather than shrink it to fit on just one face?
Yeah, so the decal, if you turn chain faces on, then I could hop between different faces. And if you want to put it on the backrest of the seat, you could do that. If you wanted to, let's say the backrest and the seat were connected. If you wanted to show it on both of that, you can do that as well. It can show like the transition of it if you turn chain faces on. But if you turn chain faces off, it will cut off once you try to leave that face. So yeah, I would definitely play around with that because it has that capability. I just didn't show it in that decal example that I did.
Mm-hmm. Again, guys, if you guys do think of a question, maybe offline or after this webinar, feel free to send us an email, right? Anything Fusion 360 related, reach out to us. Again, reach out to us, really any Autodesk product. So with that, it doesn't look like we have any more questions. So thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you guys in 2 weeks.